are poised to be the next big innovation replacing fuel in automobiles and consequently controlling climate change around the globe. Looking ahead to a fossil-free future looks like, with renewable energy scaling new heights every day and most countries adapting the EV technology as well. It will be reasonable to say the times have come where we can look at affordable power and transport, which we and are one of the prerequisites in today's fast-paced world. For the EVs to run smoothly on our roads, governments need to facilitate the production of the EVs. Batteries and charging stations need to be commissioned along with their respective management, which will need recurrent innovation, research, and development. Yes, the entire world is trying their hands in sustainable EVs, but it's not a rosy picture ahead. It's cost, shortage in chips, large-scale procurement of lithium-ion batteries, its shorter driving range, upscaling charging infrastructure, supply chain bottlenecks are some of the growing initial concerns around the business. Going ahead, there will be further mountains to scale and new resolutions to achieve as we delve deeper into EV production and distribution. However, the answer to this convert all the negatives above to positive by fine-tuning new innovations, streamlining your supply chains, more stress on qualitative technology, and of course, ample resource and favorable policies to increase production of chips and batteries. Today, we have a room full of industry professionals who have gathered to address the challenges and propose solutions to embark us on a journey of better future for our coming generation. With this, on behalf of Manufacturing Today India magazine, from the House of ITP Media India and our partner, SAP, I extend a warm welcome to all who have joined us for this insightful evening.
Let me give you a little bit an overview about the intelligent enterprise for automotive in light of the electromobility and everything, what's the dawn actually on bringing this next generation of electric cars to the road, and what we foresee from a strategy group and of course also from a product management side from SAP. As mentioned before, I'm leading the automotive industry at SAP entirely. So my group and my organization is responsible on the one hand side for the entire strategy. We work very closely with all the industry associations, the key partners, the customers from OEMs to the end tiers. And on the other side, of course, we're responsible for the product portfolio and the solution portfolio at SAP for automotive and future mobility. So by saying that, and just give you a little bit of a glimpse of, okay, going on in the industry, and we do this on a regular basis. The last 2.5 years for automotive, they were so disruptive and so fundamental changing. I think we all can agree of that our industry is in a huge shakeup. No? And everything what we knew for the last almost 50 to 60 years in optimizing our processes and the way how automotive business is done is actually pretty much, on evaluation and redesign. And of course, electromobility is one of the key driving factors, besides autonomous driving, connected car platforms, and also maybe future way of consuming mobility. The electric vehicle and the technology around the electric vehicle is the fundamental game changer to another industry. And if you look closely actually about what's the outcome or the impact of the entire industry, one thing is very, very remarkable, and I'm explicitly don't exclude any of the companies around or along the value chain of automotive. Every of these companies are actually facing a challenge where you either been disrupted in running a very profitable business with very traditional and classical automotive processes, which, let's be honest, they will also be there for a long more times at the end, because the way how a car is designed, produced, assembled, and maybe also dispatched through the logistic chain will be the same. While at the same time, of course, we're running at this era of disrupting into a new, agile, and more sustainable mobility world. So by saying this run and disrupt for all of the companies, it's pretty clear that electromobility has triggered, we call it a couple of 4 or 5 big strategic priorities, where all of companies, what we currently see in the industry, are all about. big investments and big innovations are going on in these areas. And at the end, of course, also huge transformational aspects, especially in the IT sector, is running and is coming alongside. By saying that, on the left-hand side, you see the area of customer centricity. For sure, this is something what all of the big OEMs, but also, I mean, the suppliers are tackling in here. And if we're talking about setting up new business models and new customer-centric interaction points, was very the next one, anything as a service. Probably 1-2 years ago, I would have told it mobility services. Yes, definitely something what our customers and everybody is looking for, establishing new revenue streams and looking into flexible models, how to provide sustainable mobility to the market. Good example here, for example, BrightDrop, one of the daughter companies of GM, setting up a whole new business in providing e-trucks as a service, not as a sales model, combined also with the logistic last mile delivery service, something what's clearly going together with it. Next one, of course, we all talk about connectivity of products and the connectivity of car. It's not actually rocket science anymore, but if you're looking in optimizing the fleets and everything what is in the center of this next generation of electric vehicles, it's very important that we streamline and connect all the products around and the vehicles in one simple process. Moreover, resilience of supply chains and smart manufacturing. We all know that there is still a lot of value potential to be gained. And everything what we have done over the last 20 years by establishing peer-to-peer relationships, it's currently also a little bit in shakeup. We all agree on all the disruptions, what we see for the semiconductor crisis, the raw material shortages, and so on and so forth. These are really the outcomes of, hey, we can do better on the supply chain. And even we can broaden the supply chain, let's call it to the value chain end to end, and move sustainable from an end-tier mill and mining company all the way up to the battery and the assembled car, which is then consuming the battery, and so on and so forth. Last but not least, the biggest topic, and of course, one which is very, very close to all of our hearts, topic around sustainability and circular economy. It's very obvious for an entire industry that our industry needs to be committed to the Climate Act and all the sustainable efforts an entire industry is currently driving. And if we're talking about topics like CO2 carbon footprint tracking, it doesn't stop only about mega carbon footprint within a company. No, we want to establish an entire end-to-end carbon footprint tracking from the fully assembled car all the way down to the raw material and even further to the recycler at the end of the life cycle. So with these 4 or 5 strategic priorities, SAP is always committed to take these strategic priorities and put them on top of the value chain of automotive. So starting from R&D over manufacturing, sales, aftermarket services, and mobility services, and is looking closely together with the industry. What does the industry need? And a couple of things are very remarkable here, that the capabilities, what an entire automotive industry is now needed, is very different what we've done 20 years ago. I hope we can all agree of that an end-to-end battery lifecycle management needs to look a little bit different than, managing a complete drivetrain from a classical combustion engine, or how we actually deal with multi-level demand and capacity planning to react better on the chip shortage and the semiconductor crisis. And at the end, of course, also how we at the end of the life cycle consume, for example, energy. How do we want to spend our resources and how we want to dispatch our energy into the vehicles and also back in the charging stations? This is something what SAP is looking for and putting it in the framework. And I'm very happy that SAP is very committed with its automotive strategy, that we're taking these business requirements and business capabilities and assemble them into our strategic framework and the platforms from SAP called the Intelligent Sustainable Enterprise. By saying that, SAP is operating on 3 major tech platforms. One, the business technology platform, where a lot of our capabilities, for example, from a technical perspective, either if it's on machine learning, on AI, or from integration services, or even from partner developed applications are going in. It's the first big layer. Second, in the middle, we are facing actually the whole platform about our suite, the enterprise resource planning with the lines of business solutions around spend, human capital management, customer relationship management, and so on and so forth. And we're still pushing forward of developing and putting this next generation automotive processes in the platform. And last but not least, on the top layer, you also see that SAP, we're not stopping there in just, taking the processes and deploying them on platforms. We also make them better step by step and analyzing logically over business process optimization along the complete value chain, which processes can be streamlined. And it doesn't matter if it's in R&D, manufacturing, supply chain, or the end-to-end mobility. So by saying that, of course, we can go now into an entire era of different portfolio, but 2 or 3 remarkable solutions where I would like to give you a little bit of a glimpse on what SAP is doing. It's the whole portfolio of SAP's Industry Cloud, where at the end, and you see it in the center, SAP has launched a couple of solutions where we say, this is very compelling to the market, but also in contributing how we can change and contribute to entire industry. One, I mentioned it before, the whole solution around circular battery management, where we address an entire design to operate process from the raw material where you source the first lithium and you design the first cells of a battery going to the pack and then, of course, into the car, and even beyond into the dismantling and reusage of the components of the battery. This is the way we need to think forward, and we believe we can also contribute the most with digital solutions actually from our side. Second, on the right-hand side, you see there something mentioned around e-mobility as itself. Yes, we also addressed one of the core critical problems, and I will come to that in a minute in a detail also, everything around charging infrastructure. Let's be blunt here and say, okay, if we're really keeping up the pace, and especially also keeping up the pace here in Europe of deploying and adopting electric cars, we're going to have to face a much bigger issue on how do we actually charge and manage the entire infrastructure? How do we manage load balancing? If we're looking into left and right of different load systems, do we always want to have at maximum energy waste and maximum energy storage all the companies and all the cars charged? Or do we want to have better it? And also, do we want to make the processes better into this area? So looking into these couple of different areas, this is where we said SAP is investing, providing this next generation solutions for the electromobility industry and providing also new processes which will deliver more benefits from SAP and partner ecosystem. Last but not least, I also will leave you a little bit with an impulse around business networks and industry networks, because one thing is also very clear from our perspective. If we really think end-to-end in the electromobility space and looking in these areas of sustainability, supply chain resilience, but also end-to-end management of these different areas, we clearly will find out that these are not processes which can be managed from one company. All these processes need to be multi-tier. They always start as an N-tier small and middle segment supplier, and they are not ending at the OEMs or at the original car manufacturer. It also ends at the recycler. So focusing here on different solutions and different assets, for example, for demand and capacity management over multi-tier supply chain, or parts traceability, where you're able to track down a car or a battery component from the fully assembled car all the way down to the raw material. This is the set where SAP is providing insights with the Industry Business Network initiative, what we're doing. And one specific initiative, which is leading me also on, okay, how we're elevating and contributing to the industry, and SAP is also committed to work together with the industry, is one initiative, what we have called off almost 1.5 years ago now, an initiative called Catena X. It's a complete new industry alliance where SAP is working together on eye level with many, many partners of the industries, from the big OEMs, the suppliers, but also cross-industry from chemical companies or mill and mining companies, to work exactly out this automotive network and establish this next generation of industry processes for an entire value generation. We were super happy that we launched actually this initiative exactly 1 year ago, and we got a first set of 28 companies together who are actively developing the digital capabilities. What does it need to have an electric car vehicle digital twin end-to-end, for example, along the complete value chain? And on the other side, these companies are also committed together with us on, hey, how do we really measure now a carbon footprint end to end in the scope 3 of not only for a company by itself, for a vehicle end to end and even beyond the recyclers. I'm pretty sure, I mean, this initiative have stumbled already across your way, but if not, you will hear over the next months more and more, because Catena-X is a very ambitious project globally from the entire automotive industry, fostering and boosting our electro mobility initiatives to the next level. Last but not least, 2-3 examples I would leave you around, okay, how such a transformation could look like. On the one hand side, one of the big ones, what we just transformed here around in Germany, of course, Volkswagen, one of the big automotive customers of SAP in here, but it's really also at the heart that it's not a rocket science also to transfer a complete electromobility production into our flagship with S4HANA and provide all the capabilities which are required in that area. So that's doable and also manageable, of course, in a very slight and efficient way. While on the other side, and this is also one thing what is always close to our heart, we are here to drive innovations and we are here to commit on innovations together with you. And as I said before, SAP for e-mobility, the whole suite around managing intelligent charging infrastructure, this is really close to our heart. Because the one thing what I can tell you, SAP by itself, we are very committed to the act of the sustainability agenda of the UN. And of course, SAP is also committed on delivering the electrification into our own fleet. We are running here, for example, in Germany, one of the biggest company car fleets, and we are fully committed by 2025 to only order electric cars into this fleet anymore. So by saying that, as I mentioned it before, the challenges are also here with us. We need to deploy thousands of charging stations into our parking garages at home and our employees. And at the same time, we're also very clear and focused that we don't want to charge all these cars with the fully load at the same time. SAP, we developed here together with the industry and the fleet associations and different partners, a whole end-to-end solution about an intelligent charging algorithm and a charging platform which handles your load balancing, maintain your charging stations, and also get insights into the cars. And you also see a snapshot of a couple of customers. So by that, I come to the conclusion, okay, automotive is under huge transformation. You see, of course, SAP is still committed to contribute, and we're super excited also to work together with you. And especially if I'm looking into the Indian market, it's such an impulse and good market where we could collaborate and also leverage and drive synergies together, where we from SAP, of course, want to help and support you. And as we said before, we're not here from the beginning and not from as a new player. I mean, at the end, all of our customers are running on a very, very rich stack of SAP solutions and platforms there. But one thing is very important for us, that we will not stop co-innovating with you as customers or partners. We are very committed to deliver this next generation of automotive industry capabilities together with you. It cannot be only from one side or a couple of sides. We always do this together within complete ecosystem. We embed pre-configured best practices into our platforms and roll them out to the market. And last but not least, we are working very, very closely with the partner ecosystem, and extensible solutions and platforms are accessible across the market. And together with, on the right-hand side, a set of customer highlights, which we just, took live in 2021. I think together we are on a good track of transforming the industry into a future of a sustainable electromobility. So, and with that, I would say thanks. It's been a pleasure, of course, to share the insights. Any questions or anything upfront, always welcome. If you are interested in follow-ups with me or the organization from SAP, please feel free to reach out. If anything else, I would hand over to the next speaker. Thank you all and have fun for the day. Greetings from Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Huback, for this wonderful presentation. I'm sure our audience have understood how SAP has been helping companies to drive transition to sustainable and convenient electric mobility. Thank you once again. With this, we now move on to our next session. We, unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, we couldn't have Mahesh Babu join us here, but thanks to technology, he will be joining us virtually. May I have Mahesh Babu, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Switch Mobility.
ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be in the EV and Smart Technology Summit organized by Manufacturing Today and ITP Media. I'm also very thrilled to see a lot of participants in the industry having keen interest to see how EVs are accelerating through cutting-edge innovation. I would say the global automotive industry is undergoing a tectonic shift in the last 2 decades and towards particularly sustainable mobility. EVs play a very vital role in this sustainable mobility with zero tailpipe emissions. Globally, in the past decade, this shift has given us disruptive change in the automotive value chain, and mobility is being defined completely as sustainable. A decade back, whatever targets we have set, either in India or globally, has been already broken, and the adoption has been faster than anybody could have thought in the industry. India, being what I would say follower in auto industry for the last century, is looking at an opportunity to change that into leading the value chain of technology in EVs. I would say this decade is very critical for Indian auto industry to innovate and come up with global participation in supply chain in EV, having a knowledge base in India. I strongly believe EVs as a very primary software embedded led development than an automotive development. If you look at automotive industry product development 5 to 10 years back, the effort needed on software and electronics to bring an automobile would be around 10 to 30%, depending on the segment. And most of the 70% of the work is setting up the other systems in the vehicle. This is quickly changing, and I'm seeing that a prediction of about 70% effort needed for developing an automobile would be in the software and IT, and only 30% would be in other mechanical systems. This clearly indicates that India, being a leading capital in IT, can play a very vital role globally. India's EV industry is in a very nascent stage. But having said that, most of us believe that the other areas like Europe, China, US continent have gone much higher. But I would like to say that India is not far behind. And we are in the start of a start. So we have not even started this revolution. This revolution is going to happen in this decade. And India is not far behind, and we can play a vital role through our innovation to be part of this change globally. The government of India has done substantial interventions to help the industry to be playing a vital role in this transition. If you look at what has happened in FAME 1 subsidy, which started in 2013, we had a FAME 2 revision, which helps adoption of electric mobility. The faster adoption of electric vehicles, the scheme not only gives benefit to the demand, but also has given benefits for infrastructure like charging. If you look at mobility today in India, it is being disrupted through cutting-edge innovation, through connectivity, electric vehicles, and convenience to the customers. You can see a lot of shared mobility model coming in, which can see as mobility as a service. You have seen multiple models from two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, and buses being launched in electric version in the last decade. So there is a product innovation. There is an innovation at the customer side. Even innovation around finance is being seen for electric vehicles very specifically. India is a very unique market of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheeler cars, buses, and many more. Most of the vehicles sold in India are two-wheelers, about 80 to 85%. They also consume about 50% of the fuel being imported by the country. So the focus of the country is to make public transport electric, like buses, convert the two-wheeler, which is a large industry, into electric, and look at converting this industry into a very sustainable by way of Make in India. I think if you link all the three, looking at the transition happening in auto industry, looking at transition happening in energy, and looking at Make in India as a concept being supported by government of India, then industry and consumers in India can not only enjoy a sustainable products and services, but we have to also look at how do we play a key role in the global supply chain. We'll have to start thinking about how India can play a major part in supply chain of electric mobility in the world. In the recent past, you have seen what has happened after the Paris Agreement in 2015. India was one of the 196 countries which signed the Paris Agreement to look at how we will move towards a delta of 1.5 degree or 2 degree practically every year on the climate change. After the Paris Agreement, in fact, India took a leading step by forming an international solar alliance and leading it with close to 120 countries. India's aspiration of building 450 gigawatt of our solar, which was a target in 2030, has already been achieved in the early 2022. Now we are looking at setting up 500 gigawatt more of solar, which will add up to close to 1,000 gigawatt hour of plant by 2030. India will house one of the largest solar park around the world. That's the aim of the country. So energy is getting what I would say becoming sustainable by solar, wind, and hydro and nuclear power plants. What's happening in the industry? We are seeing a substantial shift in the industry, particularly around three-wheelers, buses, two-wheelers, and cars. Three-wheelers have already moved towards a 20+% of electric adoption, and this has developed an ecosystem. Two-wheelers, we are seeing a substantial increase, double percentage of increase within a year. Electric buses, being a Switch Mobility and Ashok Leyland subsidy, we are seeing many STUs tenders, including CSL, which has recently launched a tender for 5,500 plus buses across the country. These electric buses will have a substantial impact on the environment, not only in the cities, but as a whole country. We are seeing consumers being aware of energy efficiency and looking at sustainable way of mobility throughout the country. And it is faster than any industrialist could think, and faster than I would say even a country could think. If all of this is coming together, then it's going to have a substantial impact on us. To all this happen, it's important that the technology is shifting. We are seeing a substantial work, and what I have seen in the recent past, the number of IPRs in battery is much higher than engines today. So there is a clear shift in technology moving towards battery and sustainable storage devices. Battery plays a very vital role in this transition. Electric vehicles have been invented 100 years back, but it became successful only when an innovation around battery could able to store and have cycle life higher than 1,000 cycles. The lithium ion completely changed the EV adoption curve in auto industry. Even today, there is a huge work going around battery on aluminum air, on many new technologies to see how we can jump from around 300 kilowatt hour per kg to about 500 kilowatt hour per kg energy density. Not only energy density, people are talking about life. From 1,000 cycles, slowly the industry have moved around 3,000 cycles in battery life. Today we are talking about battery life to the tune of 8 to 10 years in auto life. And we are talking about after that, there is a second life battery which can be used for energy storage for another few years. That gives a really long life of lithium ion or energy storage batteries as a whole. Innovative new chemistries of solid state is being discussed very primarily with the technologists. Most of the innovation happening in product is making the product more efficient, more reliable, more durable, and the lifespan of the product is getting increased. It is also improving the consumer behavior from a short range. When I joined the industry, we used to have a 100-kilometer range car. Now I am seeing everybody not less than 300 kilometers being discussed in India. We are talking about 500 kilometers car coming to India in a couple of years. So the consumer is getting better and better in electric vehicles. Charging time, we talked about 6 hours, 7 hours. We are talking about an hour today. There is a lot of innovation going on charging, which makes charging even 15 minutes. So quick charging, high energy density storage on batteries, long life for the consumers to use it for the life cycle of the vehicle is making electric vehicle more viable than even fossil fuel vehicle in the coming years. This transition is going to do not just the auto industry disruption, but also in the complete ecosystem of fueling and recharging. If you look at the charging infrastructure is started innovating after Government of India announced that charging is no more a sale of electricity, it is a service. Many private players, to my knowledge, credible 20 to 30 charging infrastructure players have already into the fray, and we are seeing a startup more than 50 who are working towards charging infrastructure across the country. Battery swapping and many other pantograph charging technologies are at an nascent stage to take off. I strongly believe India has a very vital role in this transition towards electric mobility. And battery, particularly innovation, is going to play a critical role in this transition, an enabler for such cutting edge movement, what I call it tectonic shift in the industry. Through this forum, I have seen people talking about batteries, people talking about EV, and finally, which is the switch mobility's favorite, net zero. We are the first automobile manufacturer in the world to announce net zero commitment. And this year, in our global factory in UK, we are looking at taking carbon credits to achieve net zero, while we will work continuously in our manufacturing strategy to achieve net zero in all the activities what we are doing. We are already working with solar alliances and solar partners who will do charging for all our buses through freewheeling of solar energy to charging our buses. We are looking at building factories in India, Spain, UK, and many other with the net zero commitment of those factories, which is making not only the product, but also the way in which we manufacturing is sustainable. Finally, you all know India has committed towards net zero as a country by 2070. Switch Mobility, being a subsidiary of Ashok Leyland, we have already started the journey. We are a global player, and I strongly believe every industry of automobile is already looking at net zero to achieve what in the whole manufacturing cycle and in the life cycle. I wish all the participants in this summit to have a wonderful exchange of innovative ideas and come up with some futuristic solutions, not only for India, but across the globe. All the best to every one of you, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Babu. For the next session, I invite Mr. Sandeep Bangia, Head Electronic Vehicles, Tata Power, Ashish Dokania, Founder and CEO, Green Tiger Mobility, and Gaurav Chakraborty, Director, Industry and Customer Advisory, Automotive, SAP India.
Okay, thank you very much, audience, for your time. And this is a very interesting panel discussion. I am from SAP. As I was introduced, I work with automotive customers, pan-India, for various digital transformation in automotive, including electric vehicle-related transformation. With me, I have Sandeep Bangia, who is the Head of Electric Vehicle, Tata Power, and Ashish Dokania, who is the founder of Green Tiger Mobile Solutions, based out of Bangalore. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Without further ado, let's jump into the discussion. And let me start with Sandeep. So Sandeep, as we have seen with Hagen explaining about the global electric vehicle, how it is getting adopted. And in India, we see so much of focus and investments that companies are doing. Now, Tata Power per se is offering a smart charging solution, right? Now, when this entire thing expands into a retail format, right? So let's say we are talking about like petrol pumps, yeah. So technologically, like what are you guys doing? How do you think it will evolve? So if you can share some perspective.
Yeah, thanks Gaurav for this, and thanks for getting me onto this EVs and Smart Technology Summit by SAP. I think, and this is a very cliche thing, that charging infrastructure is not about charging at all, really. entire piece is about the technology behind it. And so, you know, we have a customer-facing mobile app, which is meant to be the cutting edge of technology in terms of platform, the backend ERP. And also, you know, I always say this, charging infrastructure is all about 5 or 6 C's. It's customer centricity, collaboration, convenient locations, cost and choice. And I think the big thing is about the customer experience. So, and fortunately, in this forum, just leave aside the cost and choice because that's to do with the vehicles and the cost of charging. Rest of the 3 things, collaboration, which is customer centricity and customer experience, have all to do with technology and digitization. Just to give you an example, a charger is not an island. A charger talks to the car talks to the cloud infrastructure to get all this information. The charger talks to other chargers. The charger and car talk to your mobile phone. And all of these things tap upon some data and talk real time. For example, in charging infrastructure also, and finally, of course, I come from the power company. All of these things have to talk to the grid. I mean, there are examples even happening, which is happening currently. The grid will send you an information saying that, look, the price of power between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock has reduced. So, dear customer, would you like to benefit from it? Yeah. The customer gives the command, yes. Charger listens to that command, tells the... Now, all of these things are not in the hypothetical domain. It's happening as we talk. Yeah. So I guess connected is the real 6th C is what I would really like to add. And of course, these city planners, when I say city planners, there is also smart charger, smart grid, and there is a smart city. Now, smart cities need to have a heat map of all the vehicles that are there, location-wise, so that we can identify what is the best place to put a charger. All of these things have got huge amount of data, huge amount of technology behind it. And then to make it happen, I mean, installation of a charger, to my mind, is the easiest thing to do. Right. It is all of these things that go behind it is what makes the difference, is what I would believe.
Sure. I think that's a great answer and gives a lot of perspective on what goes into with so many things like smart cities coming in, so much of data and analysis. Thanks for that, Sandeep. Ashish, question for you. So you offer electric vehicles and also conversion of two-wheelers in dual-powered two-wheelers. So it's very interesting and looks quite unique. So the question is, what are dual-powered two-wheelers, and are these dual-powered two-wheelers only for individual users, or it is also like a B2B business model?
Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for the query, and thanks to SAP team, first of all, for having me here in this forum of EV and Smart Technology Summit. So good evening to everyone. Gaurav, coming to the point that you raised, dual powertrain is essentially a new concept which Green Tiger is pioneering to bring it to India. The intent of dual powertrain remains where there are two powertrains which coexist on the same vehicle. So for example, there are two different kind of vehicles. One is the electric vehicle and one is the petrol vehicle, or ICE vehicle as we call it. However, in the dual powertrain, both the vehicle coexist on the same vehicle, by virtue of which the rider gets the optionality of choosing in between the electric vehicle or the petrol vehicle, whatever they want to ride as per their requirement. The simple intent which we have for the dual powertrain remains is that the rider can do a journey of, let's say, whatever, 60, 80 kilometers, what it needs to do on electric vehicle, and there exists a petrol or a ICE powertrain as a standby for the journey beyond it, so that the rider doesn't have a range anxiety what happens in case if the charge runs out, what happens if there is an electric powertrain which develops a snag. So the dual powertrain gives the rider to use on the same vehicle whatever methodology or the powertrain they would like to ride. It's slightly different than hybrid technology, because hybrid technology where there exist two powertrain which are integrated with each other. However, in the dual powertrain, there are two distinct powertrain which coexist on the same vehicle. Just to give you a perspective, the technology like this did not happen. Even the automotive Indian standard did not have anything envisaged for something like this, which has now gotten approved in February 2022. So this is what what the dual powertrain is about. The intent or the vision with which Green Tiger works, and I will come also to, I will take a point which Sandeep did mention. Hi, Sandeep. What you mentioned about the cloud infrastructure and how the vehicle has become smart now. So I'll come to that also. But just to give you a perspective, electric powertrain is all about the future vehicles. But there exist in the country almost around 2 billion vehicles, which are the petrol vehicles, which also need to be a part of the EV ecosystem. And there is no way how you can integrate them. It's not like tomorrow we're going to scrap all the vehicles which exist in the country today. So the conversion, Gaurav, what you asked about, is converting the existing petrol or ICE vehicle into a dual powertrain, by virtue of which we can integrate the existing two-wheeler guys into the EV ecosystem and give them a taste of how EVs will work in future, and thereby providing a bridge using the dual powertrains towards the EV ecosystem. So that is slightly longish, but that's what dual powertrain is all about. Now, coming to the second point which you stated, the gig economy, if I may call that, or if I may call that new age, the new age internet companies, it's a small portion or overall mobility requirement which the country has. So if you talk about it, the total, the country will be having roughly around 2 billion kind of a two-wheeler rider, wherein just the gig economy will not be crossing around 10 million or so. So while the gig economy is important, but the intent has always been how do we change the perception, or how do we bring the common rider into the EV or a dual powertrain, and also at the same time work with the the new age gig economies, how to give their fleet aggregators or the riders a better solution, or more affordable, economical, and at the same time less carbon oriented technology for their journey. So in very as in a one-line statement, yes, we are working with both the direct consumers as well as the B2B business, as people call it, or the gig economy, the riders. Also, we are talking to various organizations like FMCG distribution, the pharma distributions, which are also highly reliant on the two-wheelers for their basic mode of mobility in their day-to-day lives. So that's what we are doing. And sorry, Sandeep, one point which you did mention, people don't appreciate what you talked about. The charger needs to be talking to the vehicle needs to be talking to the mobile phone, and chargers also need to be talking to each other. It's a very very simply that you have put it across, but that is also one thing which Green Tiger is working very extensively, and that is one part that we think will be the one of the changing or one of the cornerstone for the changing technology that we are currently witnessing in the country. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ashish. What I liked is the analogy of a stepping stone to move to a full-fledged EV, and where probably a dual version kind of helps that. Probably in this you are also meeting the challenges which are related to the EV infrastructure that you mentioned about the mileage or how much the EV can travel with your dual this thing. Okay, thank you for that. My next question is for Sandeep. So Sandeep, so we have seen that OEMs in India who work with municipals, STUs, right? And today there is a lot of, probably STUs are not going to buy buses anymore. I don't know what you think of it, but it's gone into a different model, right? So there would be service level agreements, there will be uptime requirements, and basis of some kilometers run, whatever is specified, I think it's called a GCC contract, and the revenues will come in, so will be penalties, there will be lots of parameters for penalties. And so in this, a very critical element in the upkeep of public service is the charging infrastructure and the charging infrastructure to deliver this. Again, from a technology standpoint, how does it impact you, and what are you guys doing about it as a smart charging solution provider?
Okay, the first part was the easy bit. What do I think about the GCC contracts? So I think we don't buy CDs and VCDs anymore because there is subscription.
Yes.
So just like that, we will not buy buses anymore. Nobody will buy buses anymore. It's just going to be a per kilometer. You pay for per kilometer usage in that sense, and it's a subscription, so to speak.
Sure.
That's something which the bus companies are dealing with. We provide charging to them. This is the way the world is moving towards: Uberization, subscription, no ownership, and the works. So that's the easy bit. The difficult bit is how do you work on those contracts and how do you maintain SLAs? So I think, again, it brings me back to the tech element and a deep data analytics element, which means essentially there is a tight contract between the bus owning company and not bus owning, or the state transport authorities, the bus company and the charging infrastructure company, which essentially means that they will task you to do a certain amount of kilometers per month, per day, so that your obligation to the customer is maintained, which means if a BST bus example, and I don't know the exact, so just an example, a BST bus has to run, let us say, 150 kilometers in a day or thereabouts. They will task the bus company to do this. The bus company will task me to ensure that I supply charging for that 150 kilometers, which this bus is going to do. Now, there is a huge amount of data that is sitting. What is the kind of traffic that the bus is encountering? What is the state of charge? Now, all of this, we all need to pick up and have algorithms to deal with this, so that I don't have to put one charger for every bus.
Yeah.
Because that increases my cost. And in this, cost is the entire, big variable. So we have to ensure that depending on where they're charging, I would rather sometimes put up charging along the way so that the bus continues to keep running, and which is called opportunity charging. The bus does not need to come back to the main origin depot. So if it goes from Back Bay to Sion and back, I could have one charger at Back Bay, one charger at, let's say, Sion, to ensure that the bus keeps running, because the more it runs, the more it sweats, the more revenue everybody earns. And the customer is happy because state transport is very happy because his asset is sweating, and the customers are happy because the buses continue to run. And there is a huge amount of data and workflow that goes behind it. Just to ensure if there is a particular part which had a life cycle of so many days and weeks, if you don't, and if you are able to maintain a data which says that it is likely to give way, then you actually do a preventive maintenance, again, basis of the data. So all of these things add up. Contracts of, let's say, the host, and I'm talking about the retail scenario. In a host situation, let us say a hotel like this, you have an agreement with the host for 5 years, 10 years. So you have to maintain that. And my colleague who's right here, Venkat, he is the guy who does that. He needs to know when is the contract expiring. Every month he needs to do I have to pay this host? I have to pay his power bill. And all of those things has to form a big, big workflow. If I don't meet the SLA, in a retail scenario, I lose money because the customer won't come for charging because it is down. And in a contract scenario, which is for buses, I'm being penalized if I don't meet the SLA. So I think it's a very tight linkage to the data piece and the revenue piece, very, very clearly tight linkages. And that's how I think we have to be very careful. And to optimize, more sharply use that data, the more revenue that you would earn out of it.
Yeah. So it appears, Sandeep, that in this kind of thing, which is going to become more and more, operational efficiency, especially to keep the margins, it will play a very key role.
Absolutely.
So in your view, transformational digital systems, like for that matter SAP or some, what kind of contribution can they make as you see it coming from the industry?
So I think in some sense, we are using the workflows which, and as I mentioned, my friend who is the head of commercial, he is very clearly focused on ensuring that every month there is a payout that is happening to the host. Every month there is a payout that is happening to the power company. Contract expires, you have to renew the contract on time. There is a hardware which has to be maintained, and the life cycle of that hardware, whether AMC is over, not over, that part is, all of those things are maintained by huge amount of data and workflows.
Yeah.
Any of those workflow things fail or are flawed. Just to give an example, somebody forgets to pay the bill of a power company on time. So power company is is very clearly obliged to just cut off your power. So what happens when they cut off the power? The charger is not functional. If the car comes to charge, there is no power that is available, and he goes back. That's an opportunity loss. And in a business which has got, in any case, long lead gestation, if these opportunities are, just taken away, then there's no hope. So I think people like Venkat are trying very hard to optimize and ensure that each of these likely failure points, whether human failure or machine failure, are minimized so that the revenue pool is optimized so that we are able to invest more and spread more.
Sure.
And that's as simple as that.
So that's where the critical enterprise class
Absolutely.
systems play a role.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ashish, next question, and it's again related to opportunities or challenges. EV adoption is not a cakewalk, right? Which we are seeing, especially around various models on how you're going to monitor the charge. Is there going to be a battery swap, or is there going to be some other model? So what is the sense you make out of these things, and how is EV going to be adopted? What's your view?
Gaurav, what you have asked is basically a couple of queries put together. So I would try my level best to answer it. But just before I get into that, I would like to share that Sandeep, personally for me, I spent almost around 3 years, setting up how to stabilize the grid in UK for 3 years using my company Transtel. The intent had been that the grid is facing a lot of problem on two accounts. One is the new EVs which are getting connected, and thereby you are shifting the energy need from fossil fuel to electricity. And at the same time, you are also having a more and more influx of renewable generation, which is making the grid a little more unstable. So these are the two challenges which are coming on the grid level per se. Now, using that information and coming to the point, Gaurav, what you asked is, what I see is that there are a lot of people talking about battery swapping situations, fast charging, etc. But that is good for an initial adoption. For the complete change, which we want to envisage, like shifting the entire mobility space into electric vehicle using the battery swapping, or fast charger. My personal view is that our grid is not capable today to give a solution around that. Now, in order to do that, now in order, keeping that as an information, what my takeaway from that is that battery swapping is not a holy grail. It cannot work on all mode of mobility in the same manner. Now, that is where I think a lot of industry as well as policymaker intervention will come, that whom does it suit the most to? If you want to ask me personally, I think battery swapping will suit most to the large commercial vehicles, buses, and also the logistics sector. That is where the battery swapping will work. And even if you notice what Sandeep has been answering, it is all about pay per kilometer on buses or the trucks. It's not about the common consumer like you and me who go from work to office, home to work and back. So I think the battery swapping situation or the whole kind of solution will work more so into the large commercial vehicle and the public mode of transportation. However, for the small mobility, whether it's two-wheeler, whether it's the consumer cars, I think there it needs to be more like how do we work out the battery which is more chargeable towards at home, rather than you need a separate infrastructure to charge them. Because sooner or later, my personal view is, especially in the cities, we will hit a situation where the grid will be constrained to provide more and more charging infrastructure. So in order to do that, in fact, that's one of the main pillars on which we have been positioning our offering in Green Tiger, where we try to do that battery should be chargeable at home rather than having any separate infrastructure required. And it should be chargeable in accordance to whatever is the sockets which are available in our homes. So whether it's a 5 amp sockets, it should be chargeable in the 5 amp sockets. So when you talk about the large fleet of mobility, which essentially emanates from two-wheelers, I don't think so we are there or we would need the fast charging in a EV. What we should be looking for is solving the real problem of the consumer, which is essentially around how do I, not make too many changes at the same time. Electric vehicle itself is a huge change. How do I ensure that I don't need a charging infrastructure also along with it? How do I need to ensure that I don't need to keep working on the battery swapping situation? So my personal view for the EV adoption, we need to have very clear demarcated two strategies, one for the commercial vehicles and the large vehicles, which is on the battery swapping, and how do we make battery chargeable at home in the normal home sockets for the small mobility, which is essentially around two-wheelers or potentially even three-wheelers. So that is what I see. And very quickly coming to your, the second point is how do I see EV adoption coming into the country as a whole? Yes, the start is good. We could have done better, but the start is good, promising. However, my personal view is that it will not be as swift and as fast as a lot of the people are talking about. If we get to a position where we have almost around 20% of the new vehicles, especially on the 2 and 3 wheelers, registered as electric vehicles by 2030, that will be a good feat for us. So we should not aim, when we see of the EV adoption is 120-year-old technology can be, changed over the next 5 years. That's not gonna happen. But what we should be doing is a small milestone is can we have the small mobility segment shift 20% by 2030. That will be a great feat in itself. So long and short, I would say, yes, it's a promising start, but we need to have a correction in our own view. How do we have the right expectations rather than measuring whether we are 100% EV by 2030?
Okay. So Ashish, one quick corollary to that, because you are in that space. So do you see that various value-added services in terms of usage-based, subscription-based commercials are increasing with the EV offerings, and does it help you to improve the interaction with the customers?
Yes. Again in the market, I would say that there are three type of consumers which exist. One is essentially the riders, which are essentially in the fleet aggregators or which are in the delivery segment. There, the concept of mobility as a service or pay as you go is increasing, that we are witnessing in the market today. The second segment, if I may say so, the people who are actually, like the Uberization of the world, where we have very few players, but that is the market which is growing with people like Rapido, with people like Uber, Ola, etc. However, the largest market remains is ownership of the mobility, and in each household in India today, their concept remains is, do I own the vehicle or not? And the simplest way of owning the vehicle is, the first mode of owning the any form of mobility is two-wheelers. So to answer your point, Gaurav, yes, the mobility as a service is increasing. However, it's a very determined pocket where it is improving. Now, for a rider like you and me, who's going commuting on a daily basis, are we shifting to mobility as a service? The answer is no at this point of time. And anybody who's in Bangalore, I know you all guys are in Mumbai, but
Yeah,
anybody
I'm from
who's
Bangalore.
in Bangalore can tell you that finding an Uber at 6 o'clock is a nearish nightmare.
Yeah.
And then,
Second
you're
that.
kind of shifting to, again, ownership of vehicle on their own. So my personal view is that there will exist the mobility as a service as a platform for the ride aggregators and some rider. However, the 90% of the mobility will continue to be ownership driven. So that is the first part of your answer. And the second part of the answer is from a value added service. Again, I would take the reference from what Sandeep stated on the first thing. The rider wants to have a better control on the mobility. So it is not about the fuel gauge telling when you need to refuel the vehicle. That is no longer required. What the rider wants to understand also in the vehicle is, how am I driving? How do I improve the fuel efficiency? And like, for example, what Sandeep mentioned about the state of charge as one of the things which needs to be mentioned through the rider. So what is the state of charge, and within the SOC, how can I have the higher range rather than limited? So rider wants to understand all that. Rider also wants to understand the things like, if there is an accident, can the helpline be triggered directly from the vehicle rather than somebody calling for an ambulance? Rider also wants to understand, if, for example, my vehicle is stolen, can I remotely lock the vehicle or can I not lock the vehicle? So these are things which are like in a common parlance understood that it is good to have. But from our perspective, what we have seen in the market, the country is maturing. The entire IoT is maturing, and thereby rider more or the vehicle user more and more we are seeing wants a better control on the vehicle. So in a long run, my personal view is not mobility as a service for a vehicle owner or a day-to-day rider will be as important as how do we improve or how do we enhance the control which the rider exerts on the vehicle itself. So the IoT, the cloud infrastructure, the entire telematics in between the vehicle and the mobile, that will be the service which the rider would be looking for.
So it all boils down finally again to the infrastructure, the ease with which it can be consumed. Thank you for that, Ashish. So Sandeep, you want to say something? Yeah.
So quite a few things were being said, Ashish.
Yeah.
There are quite a few things I agree with, and there are three very distinct things that I have a different view on, just to share. So the first one is the EV adoption, amongst other things that you mentioned. I'm quite optimistic, and I'm sure anybody in this room, if you ask, he has already purchased his last petrol and diesel vehicle. And if you ask anybody, I would say, they would say their next vehicle is going to be electric. This is, right, very clear. Today, in a two-wheeler, three-wheeler context, the cost of ownership is something which is a very, very strong positive in favor of electric vehicles any which ways. So there is a very compelling requirement or compelling case for a two-wheeler and three-wheeler, anybody who owns two-wheeler, even if he shifts today, he is benefiting. See, electric vehicles will never work if it's only about environment and sustainability. There is a clear need for a customer to find tangible benefits. Will it save me money? Will it give me convenience? And is it a better vehicle? Only if these three things come in, will the customer move to an electric vehicle or any other shift like this. He will not move just because it is green and it is sustainable and all of that. No, none of those. This is the good reason, three of them, and this is a nice to badge value. I am also sustainable. I am also green. So these are the three reasons which stack very, very strongly in favor of two-wheeler, three-wheeler even today.
Yeah.
And for cars, let me put it this way. The adoption has to happen. It's not a question of whether, it's a question of how soon. And why? Why am I saying this? There are three big stakeholders in this business. Number one is the government, who wants to reduce pollution. Number two, it is the automakers, whose is their existence, very existence is under stake.
Yeah.
Government is pushing this very, very heavily because Mr. Modi's commitment to COP26 as well as Paris Agreement won't happen if electric vehicles don't happen in a big way. Second, car manufacturers have stopped or have committed to stop development of ICE trains from 2025 and 26. Jaguar Land Rover, we had a call with them earlier today.
Yeah.
2026 onwards, no non-electric vehicles will see the roads. Volkswagen, General Motors, Toyota was the last one to. All of these companies will stop, and this is an official statement, this is in the public domain, stop development of the regular petrol diesel vehicles after 2025, only electric.
Sure.
And the third biggest stakeholder is the customer. Customer is asking for it, automotive companies are wanting to give, and government is pushing both of them to take. So there is no way that the adoption won't happen. So I'm extremely optimistic about the adoption. Now, whether it is 30%, 40%, so here's my take. 30% by 2025-26, 80%, 90% of two-wheeler and three-wheeler will move by 2025 and 26. And buses, largely governed by the government agencies, will be depending on how much funding they have. Given by the current atmosphere, 5,000 buses, 2,000 buses, all these tenders are working in progress and buses being delivered. The problem is the supply chain.
Yeah.
The problem is not the customers don't want it. The problem is supply chain is not able to deliver.
Yeah.
So this is one, EV adoption. Second, specifically about the swapping. I think swapping is very, very suitable for, again, small battery sizes. Buses, I don't see that happening as much. Two-wheeler and three-wheeler, very likely. Three-wheeler, definitely. And of course, the third thing that maybe I missed one. So these are the two things very clearly which the third one I think I heard Ashish mentioning was the grids not being ready. So I think the grids have to reorient themselves. Today there are smart grids which are available, which companies like us are very easily capable of doing. Example, if all the vehicles get converted to electric overnight and tomorrow morning, the power surge or power requirement will just go up by 10%. India is such a big power consuming country. And India is a power surplus country, just so that everybody knows. So we see that kind of a power fluctuations on a daily basis, maybe 2 times in a day. The only thing is, if every vehicle comes to charge at the same time, then the solutions like the one that I mentioned, car talking to the charger, charger talking to the grid, these are smart grid solutions which are very, very easily doable. And it's happening. It's not something which is in the realm of, science fiction. It's happening. So yeah, while this is an extremely optimistic view, and I'm happy to hear Ashish's view, which gives me a chance to clarify.
A question connected to that, since you are so optimistic. Do you think India will be leading globally from the EV infrastructure, the adoption of EV? What's your view? You are in that, you talk to people in that segment.
Yeah. So I think India has got a very strong advantage, which means, and like in a lot of other things, so it's going to be a leapfrogging. We are moving from petrol and diesel engines directly to, let us say, electric. And with people like Ashish, who are trying to, put the dual powertrains.
Yeah.
I think the customers are seeing a value in movement directly because they are seeing what is happening across the world.
Right.
For the very simple reason that, see, I think the big advantage that we all see is, unlike a petrol pump where you have to go to fuel up at 110 rupees or equivalent, there is power everywhere, okay? You just have to tap it.
It's a very interesting view, yeah.
At home, where maximum charging happens, so here is the fun fact, 70% of the cars have never seen a public charger, 30% of the cars have never ever seen a public charger. So there goes the EV infrastructure in the public domain out of the window. Because as long as you have a parking which is personal for your car, you have a charger for your car, quite like a personal private petrol pump for yourself. You don't need to go anywhere else. And power is available anywhere. So I think the optimism comes from the fact India is a power surplus country. Government is pushing it very, very hard. And thirdly, we will have this advantage of leapfrogging and learning from other countries like Scandinavia, like even China. I mean, anything that happens in China happens in let's say, in a lag of 3 to 7 years in India. Telecom, it happened. Retail, it happened. Digitization, it happened. And it's happening in EV. It may not be 7 years, it may be 2 years, 3 years, and maybe we'll catch up because technology innovations, as Mahesh Babu was also mentioning, are 70%, you just heard him say, 70% of an electric vehicle is about software.
Yeah.
And who is the software powerhouse in the world? I don't have to say this to you. All the software developments for global countries, globally, are happening right here in India. Bangalore, Mercedes, Audi,
Yeah.
all those software development research centers are right here. So yeah, whether an Indian manufacturer would really like to take benefit of all of that, maybe people like Ashish can take advantage of that. But the fact is that 70% of the car is software, and no guesses, no
Sure.
prizes for guessing who is the software powerhouse. So
Sure.
my optimism comes from all of these.
Absolutely. So, fair enough. So, thank you very much, Sandeep. Thank you very much, Ashish, for that very interesting and insightful discussion. I'm sure we will have opportunities to discuss on these topics further. And thank you for your time. Thank you, audience.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That was indeed an engaging discussion. With this, we will now proceed to our next session. I invite Mr. Chetal De, APJ Industry Cloud Advisor for Automotive, SAP, for an engaging presentation on electric mobility solutions. Mr. De.
I think, first of all, thanks to the audience in terms of listening to the various informations that are coming out from all the speakers that were there earlier. And we listened to a lot of areas, including how electric mobility as a whole is changing. So it's an industry on the move. In some of the countries, it has moved ahead. In some countries like India, we are trying to figure out how it is going to move. But importantly, and if you remember, as Hagen said, from SAP, we are investing heavily in terms of some of the key areas from the EV value chain entirely. When we say EV, it doesn't mean only the car at the end of the day, because there are a lot of other areas, whether there are batteries, there are mobility service providers, there are charging providers, and there can be various other areas like designing the cars, There can be areas where we are talking about new business models, where partners are working, ecosystem partners are working, where different third-party content providers are coming in and trying to give you new business models. So looking at all these areas, it is important. What we are working on is where can SAP help in terms of the electric mobility? There are 5 core areas we are working on. And these are known to all. These areas are nothing new, but SAP is heavily investing on this. One, how we are helping manufacturers, OEMs, in terms of the entire design to operate and making them the next practices. How can we help them over there? There are organizations who are moving into this entire mobility business. There are people who are intending to get into this mobility business. And how we are helping them to figure out new opportunities, new revenue channels in terms of new business models that are coming across. The core of an EV, in terms of the differentiation also, is the EV battery itself. The battery is not really a commodity, because at the end of the day, it's the battery which is making a differentiation in terms of a lot of vehicles. Obviously, there are other capabilities that are still important, but battery is still a differentiator. How batteries, especially from a circularity viewpoint, how we are managing the EV batteries is very important. Importantly, the entire topic of EV is sustainability. But at the end of the day, all these topics has to add up in terms of what are the batteries, how you're manufacturing the cars, how sustainability is actually getting impacted, how organizations are able to report sustainability in terms of the growing needs, in terms of the globally, because now today is a connected world, how we are able to solve those areas. And last but not the least, the last topic I think we are discussing about this entire EV charging ecosystem, how we are going to help them in terms of optimizing this journey and making this journey actually attractive to the end consumer also. It's very important. Obviously, we cannot cover every topic in terms of in the finished car, the battery, and the battery being fitted into the car, and finally, the second life of the battery, how this entire cycle, and finally to disposal, how it is circular in nature. When you say circular, how it is being used in its first life, how it is being used in the second life, how sustainably you are able to source the materials, how importantly it is to understand that how those in terms of traceabilities are there, and in terms of carbon footprints, all these informations at the end of the day is about the circular battery management. A lot of people call this as battery passport also. That means where you have really sourced the battery, how it has all the informations related to its life cycle, and how you have used it. Both these two are very important. And for this, it is important to understand there are a lot of alliances that are already present. And SAP, anything in Hagen's discussion, he mentioned about how we are working with Catena X. Because at the end of the day, if you are going to go through this entire alliance in terms of the entire value chain, you are not working alone. You are working from the raw material provider to who are making cells, then who are making battery packs, and then you are making vehicles. All these people are linked in this value chain. And if you are linked to the value chain, it is important that informations are passed on to each other. If it is not, it is very difficult. So that if you're talking about a provenance of a particular battery, for an example, you need to understand how it was sourced, how it was manufactured, what has been the carbon footprint across the value chain, so that when you are selling the car, you know what's the carbon footprint that it has incurred in terms of the entire value chain. So in this case, there are a lot of alliances like Catena X programs, which not only looks at battery, but also looks at other serialized materials that are coming. There are alliances like the Global Battery Alliances, which looks at the entire sustainability-driven battery management system. In all these areas, SAP is playing a role in terms of either knowledge partners or we are working from a technology viewpoint. But if you look the brass tack level, there are two distinct things that we need to understand. One, from a battery perspective, how the provenance of the battery, that if for a manufacturer, even if at an aggregate level, can we understand what information is lying from the start of the manufacturing of the battery? That means how it has flowed. The two, how we are going to use the battery and how it has been used. Now, if these two areas are taken into consideration, and I'd like to highlight that how this some of the key solutions that are going to help. One, in terms of the areas where we are talking about material provenance, where you're talking about how the material flow has happened across the different supplier channels, including where from raw material finally to the making of the battery. This one can be within your organization. What happens? There are multiple places where your organizations are distributed geographically also. You may not be using one system sometimes. Some of the part of the batteries may be manufactured in some part, some may be to the other part. There might be some batteries that are manufactured in Europe and then transferred to Japan, and the requirements are different. So in this case, how within an organization the information flows with some of your suppliers, which we can call it as more of a local network. The other area is if there are requirements about providing informations to a larger global network, how we are going to do it. So logistic business network from SAP, the material traceability solution, actually works on a blockchain method where information across your material batch, serialized materials, documents like your purchase order, delivery notes, or even carbon footprint can be exposed to different global networks or different partners through which this information can flow seamlessly. Where you can have, for an example, uniquely identifiable serialized material which is being used across the value chain. And that's the important, this solution is ready in terms of whether you create your own network or this solution can provide other global networks like Catena X this information from your organization. So this is a solution which is ready for that sort of a movement in terms of traceability. The other portion is where the battery is being used. Now the whole area is about creating a digital twin. Now, when we talk about digital twin, we always think about the finished product. There's the car sometimes. Okay, I can have a digital twin of a car. A lot of people have today in your mobile device how much kilometers you have traveled and all those things, but it doesn't stop over there. A lot of times we think about digital twin as only the IT/OT sort of or a telematic sort of information only. That's not the case. What we are talking about, can we have a digital twin sort of a concept where all the serialized materials over there, obviously which have benefits to be tracked in terms of a digital twin perspective, can be tracked. Now, when you talk about again digital twin, it's not only about IT/OT and telematics, because there are lots of other informations which are important. That informations can be within a particular organization, for an example, sales related, purchase related information, or there can be informations which are outside the organizations, for an example, insurance information, driver information, where it has been used, for an example, GPS-based tracking, where it has been done. So there can be multiple sets of information which creates a digital twin. A lot of cases, organizations, even the bigger OEMs, have their IT/OT platforms and the telematics platform ready. But what we are looking at is a more holistic approach towards where it has been used and how it has been used holistically. And here is the second area where fulfills the battery passport as a concept. Through material traceability, you require where it has been used, how it has been produced, where it has been put, and through digital vehicle lab, how it has been used, how long it has been used for its first time or its second life. All these informations will be there. Now, the information is over here. There can be multiple use cases, and I've been discussing with few of you that what you have to do with the information if you're not able to use it. And in the next section, I will talk about that also. But what to do with this information? You have all this information. So one of the use cases, we have been working with a partner, rather two partners. One is a Porsche company, their services unit, and twice from an IoT integration layer. That what we are doing with this digital twin data, can we optimize the batteries, the use of the batteries? When we say optimize of what? We heard about how batteries are connected to cars, the cars is connected to the charging, and the charging is connected to the grids and all those things. So if we can have battery data, car data, and how they are being charged and discharged, how many times, where it has been, if this information is there, just to give an example, and then we run a machine learning algorithm to see that what is the life of expectancy of the battery, think about what sort of service you can give. It can be see that how you have been using it, so your extended warranty can be personalized depending on car to car. Today what you do, extended battery, extended warranty is same for all, depending on the age of the car. Are you looking at the usage of the car? Are you looking at the usage of the battery? So think about all these things with digital twin as a cornerstone and this sort of informations now you're having. You can now customize your service offerings to your consumers, even at one consumer level or a group of consumer level, depending on how you want to put them together. So these are opportunities that you can look at. I will just play a small video how this thing works. Can we have the AV, please?
Demand for e-mobility is accelerating, and battery-powered electric cars are leading the pack. Suppliers and automakers invest heavily in the battery. To ease customers' concerns about range, availability of charging points, charging speed, and residual value of batteries, players in the sector are creating new business models. For example, as warranty periods get longer, manufacturers need to find the right balance between production costs and warranty costs. So the best battery quality must be achieved, while also shortening time to market. Suppliers and automakers need to actively manage batteries while they are in use and understand the diverse aging patterns of batteries and feed this information back into engineering. A digital twin of the vehicle and the battery can combine vehicle and battery usage data with analytics tools that execute machine learning algorithms to enable more efficient and economic operations along the entire battery life cycle. By reflecting on each vehicle's battery health in real time and giving detailed lifetime predictions, a digital twin opens up new ways and additional services to optimize battery usage and residual value. Just think of predictive maintenance, warranty extensions, or charging profiles that extend the lifetime via software updates. A deep dive into vehicle and battery conditions also enables closed-loop engineering and optimized production. Plus, it protects the vehicle resale value and the second market value of a battery. To make all this happen, SAP Industry Cloud and SAP Asset Management Solutions join forces with predictive battery analytics solutions from Twice and MHP's process and IT integration capabilities, providing materials, products, and customer insights to create new value and develop innovative business models. Learn more about our holistic battery lifecycle management approach.
The next area is obviously an offshoot of this. If you can offer this sort of a service, think about this from an EV perspective alone. Think about new business use cases that can come up. Not only from only charging perspective, but different sets of services. And when we talk about services, what are those services? The customer wants a service from you, and what are the different services it can be given by the ecosystem. When I say ecosystem, today, we are in a connected world. We are not alone. We don't provide service alone. We provide service as an ecosystem. So when we are talking about service, it's not only beyond vehicle as a service. Yes, there are rental models. Yes, there are things. But there are a lot of other areas that service can be given. It can be emergency services. It can be maintenances. It can be EV charging as a service. And along with that, there can be a lot of other monetization that can come across with this sort of digital twins and other things. For an example, if data, if it is from a privacy angle, if it is covered, maybe selling data to the insurance, and so that insurance can become more personalized depending on how the car has been used. So think about different service models and the new business opportunities that can come up. Now, how can such things work? What are the methods to it? Is there a process where you start? And how do you approach this sort of a business model? So there are, I will say, distinct 4 steps that you can see. Obviously, you can break down 4 to 6 or 4 to 2. But one is that, how do you identify what differentiated service you are providing? That is one. And I have told you one of those examples in the digital twin, one of the use cases. So there can be huge numbers of use cases based on information related to the car and the batteries. There can be other services which are more generic in nature. It can be services like third-party services, like a lot of organizations are thinking, okay, can I give music and video content as a service within a car? You are giving it today. Today it's being provided, but they don't own it. That is being owned by third party. And this sort of services is maybe new to automotive. This sort of services existed. Look at your telecom operators. They are providing multiple such services which belongs to third party. So today industry norms are blurring. It's not that this industry can do and this industry can't do, it doesn't happen. So in terms of that, you identify what sort of service, differentiated service, or a group of service you are going to provide. 2, how easily can you create models, subscription models, usage with models on those? And 3, how easily consumers can consume that. These are the first step. We are talking about subscription service and monetization model that you need to look at. And these are distinct steps. You need to do this. The second, okay, I have the contracts ready. I have subscription. My consumers through an app has already taken this. Now, how I'm going to provision it for them? Because again, you are not providing all the services. Some of the services you may be providing. Some of the services there can be third parties. How you want to provision them so they can enjoy those services. If I'm walking to a mall and I have a charging, for an example, over there, my mall tickets or my parking tickets are not applicable for me, for an example. That's an added benefit, for an example. But that is one part. The second part is that a lot of times we bundle services or entitlements, what you call it, just for the sake of it. Are those entitlements being used? Are those provisions that you are being used? Because everything comes at a cost. As Sandeep was saying, that if I add more and more things, it at the end of the day adds to my cost. Are the consumers using it even? So how do I know, how do I monitor all these entitlements that I'm providing to them, not only by me, but across through that? So that is very important. It is pivotal. A lot of people don't look at it. Third part is, and these two are very important. The third part is that how I'm sharing all these revenues across my ecosystem, because I am not providing. Again, we are providing. And last, not the least, but the settlement of all those things to customers, to consumers, to partners, and what I am finally getting. If we follow these 4 steps from starting where services starts, it means that new business models you can offer to consumers. And to add to this, I think in the end of the session, we will talk about, our partner will talk about how they have done from an EV charging perspective in Europe, one of this subscription-based model through charging in Italy. So the cornerstone of this entire thing is the subscription model that SAP can provide in terms of subscription management and entitlement management as a solution which can help, one, from a subscription perspective, creating different models, creating different rate plans, and finally, what partners, who gets what, all this from a commercial construct, and entitlement as a solution, as anything as a service model, that if anything as a service model is done, how provisions will be provided, how you are able to monitor those provisions at one place, whether it is being provided by you or others, and how we can have those third parties linked to you and see those provisions being provided to them. There are a lot of other technicalities around it, integrations and all those things. I'm not getting into it today, but this is the brass tag in terms of high level, what are the key requirements. As at the last, we will understand something about the subscription models and how it has been used. I will just look at that how entitlement can be managed with SAP's entitlement management as another video.
Effective entitlement management is essential in the new digital world, where more and more products are consumed as a service. How can you easily manage your customers' rights for all their different products and services, all under a variety of licensing models? How can you execute timely renewals, tap upsell and cross-sell opportunities, and provide world-class digital delivery? The answer is SAP Entitlement Management. Reduce revenue leakage. With SAP Entitlement Management, you have full visibility into what your customers are licensed for, as well as what has been consumed. Automated triggers notify you to take action when a request for consumption goes beyond the licensed entitlement, eliminating unlicensed usage. Licensed credits, consumption, and remaining balance of credits are available to trigger renewals or upsell, reducing revenue leakage. accelerate new revenue streams. Does your solution include products, software, and/or services? Is it a subscription-based license or a license based on usage? Regardless of how you package your solutions or what monetization models you use, SAP Entitlement Management is a simple and cost-effective way to manage all your customer entitlements in one place. Here, you see how one product offering entitles your customer to multiple entitlements, such as subscription, license, support, warranty, and services. This flexibility minimizes the time to market for new products, enabling new revenue streams. Optimize digital delivery. In the new digital economy, selling a solution is only the first step. Orchestrating business processes based on that sale is the cornerstone of a true digital transformation. With SAP Entitlement Management, you define business events and track their statuses to drive downstream processes. The solution can coordinate with fulfillment systems on the status of shipments or provisioning of a solution, and then send notifications to the order management system to trigger revenue recognition. The solution can also identify renewals, send customer notifications, and generate opportunities in a CRM system, protecting your bottom line through optimized digital delivery. How does your organization capture value in this software-driven world? By reducing revenue leakage, accelerating new revenue streams, and optimizing digital delivery with SAP Entitlement Management.
Now we have seen how we are going to manage new business models. Important part next is so much of offerings are being given to consumers. You can have multiple types of vehicles today, and you can have multiple types of batteries in it, and there are multiple services that you are providing. Is there an impact on your manufacturing? As the models increase, as the models changes, there is a lot of impact into your manufacturing. And with EV, we also know there are even technologies that are getting changed. Your motor to transmission, there are different ways that you can deliver now power. So it becomes very difficult that how those flexibilities that you are providing to your consumers or to your customers to choose from has an impact on your manufacturing. Added to that, it's known that electric vehicle at the end of the day is, yes, it will take a bit of a time. It's not that today and tomorrow you have every vehicle as electric vehicle. So the OEMs has to survive in terms of having electric vehicles being manufactured, IC vehicles being manufactured, and also hybrid vehicles being manufactured, probably out of the same plant. You are not going to change the plant assembly line immediately today because that's a huge cost that goes, and that's the practicality of the situation people are having. With all the best of model mix planning and all those things, people are still having the pressure. Because obviously the EV sales is not going to change suddenly tomorrow to everything, 100% EV. So how are we going to have this variation of multiple models, multiple demands that are coming, differentiated products in EV into manufacturing is something what we are looking at. We have to look at flexible manufacturing, and all what I have discussed right now is about flexible manufacturing. How your shop floor, your assembly lines can be transformed into more flexible manufacturing where you do not lose the capability to mass produce, but with certain amounts of complexities, certain amount of variations to it. Now, this is not as simple as I speak because every organization will be having its different journey. It will not be same for any of them. And even within our organization, two plants may be having different journeys because of what model mix they manufacture at the end of the day. But here, this flexible manufacturing, what we call it, is a mix of what we are talking about, cellular manufacturing or modular manufacturing. That is something that is coming up. How is it being used? We will have a video how Daimler actually is using it. So this is called Factory 56. You can go to YouTube and you have a bigger video, 2.5 minutes video, you can look at it. If you have seen in between, they was talking about a tech line. So what they have done, they are looking at an assembly line, and then they are having a separate AGV driven line where they are having those differentiated models or differentiated areas that are being serviced. Now when we talk about a car assembly, there are a lot of components in it. For an example, the EV battery being assembled, then there are electronic components being assembled. Are we talking about entirely shifting from an assembly cell line to a cell manufacturing? Yes, people are thinking about it, but it is not so easy. What we see, the hybrid model is being adopted, as we have seen in the case of Daimler, where we are having the best of both worlds. We are not removing the low cost, the high production, optimized production capabilities of assembly line, but we are also looking at dynamic routing of voxels of specific voxels that are being created for specific. For an example, a particular wheel assemblies and other things are being assembled through the cellular manufacturing. Or flexible material staging is happening in some of the areas where this flexible manufacturing of hybrid of both assembly lines as well as cellular manufacturing is being used. Now, this is an area, how much of what is, again, as I told you, that will be dependent solely on organizations to organizations, on plants to plants, on models that are being manufactured in your plant. However, with SAP, we support all of this in terms of having this cellular manufacturing being supported through the manufacturing solution, manufacturing MES solution, what we call a digital manufacturing industry cloud solution, which helps in the operational sequencing, which is required in cellular manufacturing, as well as the resource dispatching. These are the two tenets of cellular manufacturing, which is supported by this. And along with the traditional assembly line, what we believe is that this entire flexible manufacturing can be handled through these solutions. Looking at the time, I am not getting into this video of this because we are running a bit short of time today. So I will skip this video maybe and then move forward. The last but not the least is the charge point operation, because we have covered the entire life cycle part of it and now how you charge it. And we had a lot of understanding discussion that we had with the two panelists. These are concerns well known. These are terms of how to optimize the charging point operations, what are the different roles different players play in it. And what we have done is that, we have divided into two specific roles. Again, there can be roles in between, one doing the other's role, but what we see is one is the charge point operator perspective, who sets up most of the infrastructures, works with the utility companies, works to see that the certain grids are being allocated to them, what sort of power they can supply, how many charging points they are going to have. The other key role which is actually developing is this area. It is the e-mobility service provision. That means it is like our telecom service providers. Wherever you go, you cling on to the roaming because you don't really care that who is providing, which tower is providing you that sort of information to you or helping you in your calls. So you think about this as the tower which actually is providing you the connectivity and the charge. This is absolutely taking care of wherever you go, you provide. Now, these roles can be interchangeable or one can play all the roles. That role particularly can be played by somebody and this can be a third-party operator who operates on behalf of them. There can be also roaming that can also come, which we are seeing in Europe in terms of where one service providers, there are multiple service providers and wherever you probably go into and charge, it's the roaming facilities are there where those charges are ultimately managed by Govt, for an example, in Europe. So we look at from an e-mobility service provision, especially the charge point operation, and also moving towards the e-mobility service as a solution. Now, what are the different scenarios we see? Now, again, this is very important. One is the charge at home scenario. In a lot of these cases, charge at home, sometimes the organization which you are working in is helping you in terms of, okay, you take EV vehicles, charge at home, and we will pay for it in terms of the charge. So these are making some sustainability goals inside. For an example, in SAP, for example, SAP Labs has this provision where organizations can charge at work. And there are cases in some of the countries where charge at home are also being provided. The middle one, obviously, is the charge at public, where a lot of complexities come in terms of, one, we have described the subscription models and other things that can come up. The other is areas like dynamic pricing that can come in, which is based on the grid price and others, those areas will be handled in terms of how you are quoting the consumers immediately in terms of what charges, depending on what price you are getting from the back-end grids. So those complexities are there, and we are aware of all these things. So what the solution today we are already in covers many of these areas, and we are working, obviously, mainly in the European market, we are seeing a lot of traction in this. We are constantly working on those areas which new capabilities are getting built on. So the key tenets of this solution that we have, one is the charge point device management. This is as per the Open Charge Point Protocol, OCPP, compliant charging. So any OCPP compliant charging stations can work with us for this CMS solution, charge point management solution. So the entire monitoring of the charge points, how much of what are the different charging units, how it will be connected, are there parent-child relation within that, all those key capabilities are built into it. The second part is the batch management, which is very important, like who is coming to charge at the end of the day, whether it is an RFID-based charging and other things, where RFID-based tags are there, where customers or employees can walk in and the EV can actually identify it. Third area is the charging station management, where I want to highlight the dynamic load management area, which is very important. For an example, I have limited EV charging stations. Nobody has unlimited at the end of the day. So within that, how I am going to, schedule, for an example, if there is a schedule like the buses and other things, how, for an example, if there are multiple cars, how can I dynamically, based on some algorithms, try to see which has to be, because your connected power is limited, because you have certain which is being given to you, how within that, how it can be optimized depending on some machine learning algorithms. So these are the dynamic load management capabilities that are being built. And with that, obviously, you get the statistics of it. Which of your charging stations are really performing, which are not, which are lying empty, where there has been much load. So then you can plan accordingly that what are being utilized, what are not being utilized, what had been down maximum number of times. All these informations are available. Along with that, we are opening up to OCPI and other compliance where we can have this roaming interconnection, billing related integrations with our solutions, all those things to also deliver charge at public capabilities.
So here I am at the office. I could see that my parking spot was available. I have parked my car and I will start charging now.
Electric mobility is SAP's answer to the challenge of electrifying the transportation industry as quickly as possible. The cloud-based software provides a complete package to charge point operators to run the business effectively and efficiently. Here, you can check the status of your charging infrastructure, manage each one of your charging stations, check the details of ongoing and historical charging sessions, review a database of all the electric vehicles, and make use of powerful in-app analytics. The enterprise-grade capabilities will offer integration with SAP Concur, SAP Analytics Cloud, and S/4HANA billing and invoicing.
Oh, I just received a message. My car is fully charged now.
Thank you, Mr. Dey. We would now move on to our next session, which is a presentation on Sustainability Suite by Amar Jadhav, Solution Architect Sustainability, SAP India.
So good evening all, and thanks for your time. I'll be covering some of the insights around sustainability for EV as a product. While of course EV by very nature of it is a zero emission product, of course in the use phase when it comes to the tailpipe emissions. But EV is also like any other product. It has its sourcing related impact, it has its manufacturing related impacts, and of course end of life related impacts. So the topics that I'm going to cover would be around sustainability. What are some of the key trends that we see in the industry? And this is not necessarily related to EV only, but for any manufacturing industry. Then we will look at a product life cycle view of, let's say, EV manufacturing or EV as a product, and try to understand some of the sustainability related opportunities across these life cycle phases. We will then look at sustainability is not only for sake of sustainability. Of course, there are positive outcome that you can drive to sustainability in terms of reducing the emissions or maybe increasing the livelihood of the community within which you operate or any such sustainability impact. But it's also business, correct? We are all in the business. So there are also impact on the business. So that's the aspect that I'll try to cover. And lastly, we'll pick some of these sustainability opportunity areas across the product life cycle and try to see how technology can help you support your sustainability journey or accelerate your sustainability journey. Right? So let's look at the trends. The first one, I think most of us are aware there is more and more demand from various stakeholders on corporates to disclose their sustainability related data. Like in India, from next financial year onwards, business responsibility and sustainability report is mandatory for corporates to disclose. Secondly, investors are not looking at only financial data anymore, but non-financial data to rate the corporates. And this is also one of the parameters that are being considered for, let's say, raising a fund from the market, correct? Where the cost of capital is an important factor. The second area is, we as a consumer are now very much aware. Of course, we have an access to a lot of information. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but then it's now we also appreciate or we also understand, the impact of a business being run sustainably, which is impacting environment and society in a positive manner. And that's why there is a trend where consumers and employees would like to associate it with a brand which is a sustainable at its very core. The third area is this whole talk about triple bottom line. I'm sure you would have also heard of this jargon, but it's all about how do you balance the profitability, how do you balance the impact of your operation on environment and the society. That's the other area that's also being widely talked about. Now looking at these trends, there are various sustainability aspects. ESG is big term again, environmental, social and governance. But let's try to understand from the context of, let's say, product life cycle. And in this case, let's say it's an EV product, and It has its own phases, typical phases like raw material, inbound transportation, manufacturing, outbound, then use, and then finally end of life. Now let's look at some of the opportunity areas when it comes to the product life cycle. The first one being reducing the scope 1 and the scope 2 emission, which is the direct emissions associated with energy use or indirect emissions associated with the purchased electricity or any other form of energy. On the same line, the value chain emission, which is a scope 3 emission, which is cutting across the life cycle phases. And if you look at in the manufacturing stage, the very nature of product and how do you go about designing a product also impacts the footprint associated with that particular product. For example, if you are adopting more and more design practices, which is reducing the waste from the very inception of the product, that itself is a good starting point, correct? And if you look at from a product life cycle standpoint, at every stage of the life cycle, there are a lot of environmental impact that is associated with it, which is a footprint. And if you have that visibility of how much footprints are associated across my life cycle at different phases of the product, you have an opportunity to look at where can I reduce those footprints associated with the product life cycle. Similarly, and of course, when you design a sustainable product, you also have to have a sourcing, the supply chain in place. That's where the sustainable sourcing comes into the play. One of the aspects when it comes to sustainable sourcing is you would like to have more and more information from your suppliers about the raw material that you are procuring from them, their environmental footprint, so that you can consider them, you can incorporate them when you are calculating the entire product life cycle, right? And the core processes around manufacturing, which is EHSM, which is environment, health and safety, energy consumption, water consumption, waste generation, and so on and so forth. In the outbound transportation, this whole concept of returnable packaging material, which is the pallets, the containers, and the other areas. So how do you ensure that you are able to extract more value out of the returnable packaging material that is already there in your supply chain? So bringing it back into supply chain, use the location information, the status information in the planning, and so on and so forth. Vehicle in use, wherein one of the design aspects that you consider is how do you bring certain design intervention through which you are able to extend the life of the vehicle. And that's also an opportunity to reduce an inflow of the material, because now you are able to extend the life of the material and you are able to reduce the reliance on some raw material which otherwise is required to manufacture a new product. Product as a service, I think Chetal did talk about it, which is also one of the sustainability opportunity where instead of selling a product, you sell it as a service, where you increase the utilization of the vehicle, increase the utilization of your product. And lastly, end of life, where you recover the material, which is again can be brought back into the supply chain, or maybe you would like to sell it in the secondary market, right? So those are the areas that we could understand in terms of where the sustainability opportunity lies in the entire product life cycle. Now let's look at, this is the sustainability aspect, but as I said, there is also a business sense to pursue all of these opportunities, correct? When you look at scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emission, it's directly impacting the cost of operations, because you are able to reduce the energy that is otherwise required to produce your product in the manufacturing operation, and thus you are able to reduce the cost of operations. When it comes to responsible sourcing, you are ensuring that the supplier that you are onboarding is having a good ESG performance. Because nowadays in social media, any bad news, kind of spreads like a speed of light, and that can impact your reputation. The third area, and when you look at sustainable sourcing, there are a lot of areas like child labor use or a conflict mineral, and any such risks that are associated with the supply chain, correct? Which can actually damage your reputation. The third area is product design, wherein let's say if you are selling your vehicle in the EU market, and EU has certain regulations in place related to ELV, end of life vehicle, or maybe ROHS or REACH compliance that you have to comply with. If you are not able to fulfill those compliances, there is a risk of you losing out on the sales and also the reputation and the market share, correct? The last area is about product as a service, which is, of course, you will run your core business, which is manufacturing a car and selling the car, but also you may be looking at a new business models where you're offering car as a service. So that's another area where you can generate a new revenue stream. So these are some of the areas that I have picked from the earlier slide. Not all areas I have picked, but if you're interested, can share those slides as well. So this is how, sustainability is also making a business sense, correct? Now let's look at the technology in some of these areas. The first area is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. Now here, already in your supply chain, already in your operation, a lot of data are getting generated. One example, in manufacturing, you are consuming an energy. So that is one form of data. In your upstream supply chain process, you are procuring a raw material where you are incurring certain spend on a particular raw material. So there are a lot of data which is already generated in your operations. And how do we actually automate, let's say, collection of the data and converting that into an equivalent footprint, which is today done it in a very, very crude form, where there is an Excel sheet is floated around and manually somebody enters the data. The question mark of the quality and the accuracy of the data, quality and accuracy of the data is a question mark. So how technology can help automate the data collection and converting into a footprint, equivalent footprint. Secondly, once you have the visibility, then you identify the emission hotspot and then drive actions. Third, it's not about collecting and monitoring the emissions, but it's also about bringing it back into your operations. So for example, nowadays, some of the companies have initiated this, what you call internal carbon pricing mechanism. One of the carbon pricing mechanism is carbon fees, where depending upon the carbon emissions that you are emitting, you will be charged a carbon fees. Now, when you charge a carbon fees, this information also gets reflected in your financials in the form of, let's say, a revenue getting, a carbon fee getting deducted, or a revenue is deducted by a carbon fee, or a profit is deducted by a carbon fee. So there is also integration that is possible in the business processes, which will again help you to look at, okay, how some of these strategies are working for you, what are different ways that you are able to adopt to reduce the carbon emissions, correct? So that's where technology can play a role. Second area is product footprint. So where maybe some of the manufacturers would have done a study on the life cycle assessment of the entire product, which is cutting across multiple environmental impact. It could be a land use, it could be a carbon emissions, it could be a water, it could be a biodiversity loss, or any such impact because of the entire product life cycle. So there's a LCA database, and then there is also business application. Now if you combine all of them, both of these data, which is LCA database and ERP, then you would be having a visibility of at any point of time, what is the inventory that you have in terms of raw material, in terms of finished product, and through an LCA database connection, you would know that at any point of time, what is the life cycle assessment, or what is the product footprint associated with your product in the raw material form, or maybe in the semi-finished goods form, or maybe in the maybe a finished goods form. And again, like in scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions, you are able to drive actions also through these insights. The third and most important thing is that you are now able to prove the sustainability claims of your product, that my car is 30% circular. And how are you able to prove it? Because I have a life cycle assessment data, I have an inventory data, and this is the kind of footprint associated with my product, this is the kind of material that I'm using, and because of which I'm able to reduce the footprint associated with my product. So these are the three areas that technology can help. The next one is responsible sourcing. I think this I did talk about briefly in that mother slide, anchor slide rather, which is all about how do you ensure that the supplier that you are onboarding is meeting the ESG criteria, correct? And there's a lot of information now available in the public domain about the suppliers, about their I would say supply chain, or maybe some issues that they have within their operations, and so on and so forth. So how technology can help, let's say, bring all of these data together and possibly calculate an ESG score for a supplier and a risk score for a supplier, which you can then take into consideration when you are, let's say, awarding a contract to a particular contractor, or maybe you are evaluating whether this is the right fit for our operations or not, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the areas where technology can again help. The next one is sustainable product design. Now this is an important aspect. As I mentioned, design is where you can actually make a huge impact. So if you know this circular economy principle, one of the principle is design out the waste. That means you are making certain decisions in the design stage itself so that the downstream waste can be eliminated, or you can extend the life of the product, correct? So let's say you made those decisions, now you want to enforce those decisions into business processes. So for an example, the design specification gets converted into a sourcing specification, correct? As part of this specification, you are making it mandatory for suppliers to disclose the environmental footprint associated with the part or a component that they are supplying, and so on and so forth, correct? And of course, it is not about sustainability criteria, but there are regulatory aspects also involved, like EU, as I said, there's a rich compliance that you have to comply with, ROHS, which you have to comply with. So how do you enforce all of these compliance requirements in the product design itself so that the subsequent process or downstream process takes care of all of these aspects? And this is important because if you are not meeting those requirements, then there's a chances that you may lose the market, and there's a huge loss of sales that you will incur, correct? So that's where the business sense also business sense is also there. Lastly, product as a service, which is again today we all have cars, and probably all cars comes with the telemetry, and now let's say I have a Honda car, Honda knows where I am, how much I'm driving a car, how I am using a car, and so on and so forth. But then this is also an opportunity with these connected cars or connected products for OEM to offer it as a service rather than selling it upfront. And then once they sell it as a service, they also have to ensure that they have a revenue management process in place, which is a car telemetry, which is giving you utilization data, usage data, is actually integrated with the billing application, like a subscription billing, or maybe any such revenue management related processes that they may have, correct? And lastly, it's also making sense that if these cars are connected, you have now visibility of how these cars are being used, how these cars are being utilized, what are the kind of problems that the customers are facing, to bring it back into the design in the R&D phase, so that you can further improve on the overall product design and the performance of the product. So these are some of the areas where technology can play a role. And this was a short presentation. I do not have any further slides, but that's what I wanted to share. If you are interested to have a detailed version of this deck, you can drop me a mail, or we can connect over dinner. I can share those slides. So that's what I wanted to communicate. And thank you very much for your time.
I'm Anurag from Accenture, and here you are seeing Industry X. Industry X is all about connected part of the world, connected products, connected manufacturing, connected ecosystem. We are talking about electric vehicle, and it is beyond vehicle. Enough has been discussed throughout the session. A lot of speakers have spoken about. I just want to bring this basic topic of idea to execution. And in execution, as more and more companies are getting into this EV business, what are the kind of deeper conversations we are having? And I'm bringing some perspective from globe, including Europe and US, of course, besides Asia. So the engineering side and in-car software side, we feel that it is kind of getting established. There are a lot of solutions, a lot of options, and it is getting stabilized. But the big problems are surfacing in the operations area, whether it is purchasing, supply chain, or manufacturing. Manufacturing, I think Chetal was talking, the coexistence of ICE and electric vehicle. And from this coexistence scenario, it is transitioning into phase out scenario. So it is very, very difficult. It's a problem, engineering problem, but more important, it is a people problem, the skills problem. On the right side, the problem is bigger, and it is about adoption of EV as option for consumers. One is range hesitancy, and we heard that that is going away. A lot of range is coming. But charging availability as convenient as fueling option is a bigger problem, right? So that is one important thing. And has EV business model understood the customer sentiments enough? The answer is no, and it is being discovered every day. So the range availability, fueling option, equivalent charging option, understanding customer is some of the things on the right side. And then, I was working with aerospace companies, and especially Boeing, and when they introduced new 787, the amount of data 787 was spitting in a year was more than rest of the fleet. 7 X7s have emitted throughout their life cycle. So with the connected vehicle, software-driven vehicle, the amount of data is going to be huge. So data management, basic data management continues to be a challenge. However, how to turn that data into revenue is a bigger challenge. Some solutions exist, some ideas exist, and some of the use cases which Sandeep was explaining about charger talking 2x, vehicle talking 2x, but there are enough and multiple options. I think Amar just spoke about sustainability, and sustainability in entire vehicle life cycle is becoming a problem. So here, if slide is visible to you clearly, we at Accenture are viewing it as an ecosystem, complete ecosystem, starting with mining on the left, going to the services side on the right. But throughout this journey and our experience is that this whole ecosystem is becoming a complex system of systems. It is having challenges from the energy generation side, and especially working in Europe, we are seeing with the present crisis at the borders, this energy transition is becoming a big subject. So while you will have EV, you will have charging infrastructure, but you should also have sustainable energy option, energy generation option. So energy transition, decarbonization is a big thing which is happening upstream. And then as we come to the whole EV usage side, the utility and charging infrastructure availability continues to be a big challenge. So at Accenture, we continue to see it as a complete ecosystem and have been investing, incubating in this innovative space. And over last couple of years, we acquired also a lot of companies which have become part of one Accenture. In interest of time, I will not drain too much on this, and I will also skip a video because I had a video just showcasing how all these companies, acquired companies, joining forces in one Accenture are helping. But just to give you a high-level perspective, we look at this whole canvas as batteries as one segment, EV, vehicle as second segment, and charging as third segment. Of course, charging will include charging infrastructure, charging model, but also energy generation and energy management part of it. And all these segments, we support strategy consulting, design engineering, technology advisory, and so on and so forth. But really speaking, none of these problem statements we are hearing from customer are exclusively for one segment. It is always connected. So when we talk to EV customers, the problem often relates from upstream material selection, site location, gigafactory, and so on and so forth. So across every segment, I will just give you a quick glimpse of how we are working with our clients to solve it. We have exclusive batteries services segment, where we have consulting and engineering, two segments of service. I will speak more about consulting because engineering-wise, there are quite a bit of solutions existing. I just brought few case studies to exemplify how we are working. Needless to mention that SAP is choice of technology in many areas, and it coexists with various other niche technologies. So this case study is from Norway, where a startup is investing in setting up EV gigafactory. So they wanted us to verify their complete gigafactory plan, including the kind of manufacturing processes, manufacturing equipment, manufacturing setup that they have done. And they wanted to expedite their whole setting up process, including supplier collaboration. And their aim was to supply really safe, high energy density battery, I think something which Mahesh Babu spoke about initially, and cost competitive, clean lithium ion batteries. Observation is that lithium ion is currently very, very popular. Even though in commercial vehicle segment, hydrogen fuel is gaining a lot of popularity, but most of the cases, the batteries are going towards lithium ion battery. Here also we have two segments. One is these startup kind of customers who are coming like this example of Norway. But we are also working with OEMs who are transitioning their ICE-based powertrain manufacturing setup to a battery-powered manufacturing setup. Second segment is, of course, EV. And I would frankly say that this is not a very difficult segment as far as these basic processes are concerned about engineering, plant setup and operations. The biggest challenge that this segment is facing is integration, and integration at scale. So we have heard the concept of disruptors versus giant. So many disruptors have already crossed the chasm, and they have volume spitting factories. But the challenge the giants like Volkswagen or Daimler or others are facing is that they have multiple product platforms and the volumes are very, very high. To get to that scale, they cannot definitely adopt the disruptor model. So that is the main problem we are hearing from our customers. And one of the example here is again from the software engineering, which I think Sandeep spoke about, that India is hub of it, and we from India are involved in this project in a big way. This is one of the leading automotive OE manufacturer. Globally, it is in top 5. And their vision is to make an integrated car architecture. Now, this car architecture will cater to currently existing IC engine driven cars as well as future EV cars. It has multiple brands. Each brand has multiple platforms and then variants. So that complexity is very, very high. And for all this complex portfolio, this OEM wants to develop a common architecture, but on top of it, a common architecture for in-car software systems. Now that in-car software systems will not only run the cars, but will also manage the ecosystem, will also manage the car in use side of it. So it's a very, very complex program. These software will start coming from 2025 onwards, but following agile DevOps methodology, we are in testing phase of a lot of those solutions already. The third segment, which is very, very important and most complex of all, is EV charging. And here it requires collaboration across multiple uniques. On the left side, you see the pyramid of our offerings, and on the right side, you have several examples where we are working. So besides strategy and consumer experience, we do have a lot of focus on the charging side. And I'll just narrate a quick case study from Europe. So this free-to-move is a e-solution which is being developed in Europe. And it is primarily aimed at providing customer that convenience which I spoke about earlier through public as well as private or hybrid charging wherever they go, so that it becomes convenient coupled with the range, sufficient range in EV. They want to enhance embracing this EV vehicles. So this is where Accenture is working with Stellantis. I'm sure you know about this company now, the new name of PSA, Fiat, and Chrysler combined. And ENGIE is one of the France headquartered energy provider. So they had this joint program called Free to Move, where Accenture is working with them. And the whole objective is to go to net zero as soon as possible. Of course, they have set up time till 2035. What we are working is really defining the complete subscription-based model and then bringing that into the reality through various platform solutions coupled with mobile app where consumer can really control their consumption, charging, and usage. In addition, we are also working on installing charging points across Europe and integrating it with the grid. So a lot of these use cases were described, so I'm not going to drain it. But actually, Accenture is working on these solutions, developing platform, and also more and more working towards the new fleet electrification strategy. So there are several examples. Just in interest of time, I will leave it for your visual consumption, and that's all from my side. I can be contacted. We have Dr. Ashish Mishra, who can be contacted for further discussion. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm from a company called Digital Root. So unlike Accenture, everyone knows Accenture. So Digital Root, it may not ring a bell. So let me explain a little bit how we actually fit into the SAP world. We are basically known as a solution extension partner. Or in short, we call ourselves Solex partners. So what that actually means is SAP actually brings in digital route technology into their solution suite, into their landscape as part of the end-to-end offering. So it actually helps them extend their solution offer to provide a more, and to complement and provide a more complete end-to-end offering. So that's where we are. That's what we actually bring along into the SAP world. So as a partner, so my name is John Tan. I'm from Digital Route. I'm actually based out of Singapore. So I will not spend too much time introducing myself because it's a very stressful time. I'm standing between you and dinner at the moment, so I'll do this very quickly. So at Digital Route, we unlock the value of data. Okay, so this data is very interesting. So this data, we're actually specifically looking at targeting usage data. So what is usage data? Usage data is a type of data that explains, that captures information about your consumers, your customers. What service have they used? How much have they used? All this information about maybe the time of the day that the person has used it. Maybe you want to charge it peak or off-peak, different rates. Is it time of the week? Is it a weekday? Is it a weekend? All this information about how that service that your company is providing, how is it being consumed? How is it being used? These are usage data. And why is that important? Because I think as somebody from Tata mentioned before, we're going Uberization, right? A lot of models are going to subscription-based business. We are no longer just selling an SKU. So a lot of businesses are actually transforming and moving into a subscription world. And subscription alone is not sufficient. So studies have shown that a mixture of, okay, when I talk about subscription, we're talking about recurring fees. Every month I pay a fixed fee. So studies have shown that subscription standalone will make your business grow, but if you were to package in a usage component together with subscription, your business is going to grow much more than just purely recurring. So that's where we come in, processing usage data. And who are we? We have 20 years of experience in managing usage data. Why 20 years? We actually come from the telco world. If you imagine, think about telcos as being pioneers. These are the guys who started charging you on a phone call. How long was your phone call? How many SMS did you send? How much data, how much gigabyte do you consume? So telcos are actually the pioneers when it comes to usage. And we're actually bringing in that experience of how to manage this usage data to make sure that it is then ready for you to actually put a price tag on it so that you can actually invoice and charge the customer. So that's where we are. And we have over 400 deployments worldwide. And one of our biggest customers is actually right here in India. It's actually Jio Reliance. So Jio Reliance is about 360 million subscribers at the moment. And our platform is basically processing all the usage data from Jio Reliance customer base. And lastly, just to tell you, from a telco background perspective, we have one particular customer who is actually processing, using our platform to process 400 billion transactions on a daily basis. All right, so this is where we are, or rather this is who we are, Digital Route. Okay, so what I want to share with you, why am I talking about usage? Why am I talking about usage? I want to share with you a customer reference. In this case, it's actually Alperia. Alperia is basically a utilities company in Italy. So the gentleman you see on screen right here is Mr. Luca Seriani. He's basically the Chief Digital and Technology Officer of Alperia Group. And I have basically, I'm going to share some information that he spoke about. He actually participated in an SAP event just last year. It's called Billing and Revenue Innovation Management Live 2021. So just last year, he shared how his company's journey, how they actually moved into an EV charging. Again, Alperia, as a utilities company, EV charging is a new business model for them. Okay, so in this, there's actually a QR code for the video if you want that. So he actually shares how the company moves into a journey of enabling a new business of EV charging. All right, so one thing that I'll quote at the bottom right here is basically a quote from that presentation. So moving into a usage world is something new to them, to Alperia. Sure, they are doing utilities, but they're reading meters on a monthly basis. Every month there's one usage. All right, but moving into the EV world, it's a completely different world for them. So they realize that you should expect changes in operation activities. You should also expect impact on the infrastructure. And one of the reasons he quoted here, just one of the reasons is because the amount of data that will be coming in. Imagine every time a subscriber plugs in, and then when he pulls out the plug, it generates a transaction. That is the usage that we're talking about. So the business they actually roll out, it's a sub-brand called Neogi. It's based out of Italy. So it's a very busy slide, but just let's focus here on the bottom left, if you can see, maybe in the way. So just want to share, moving into the EV world, what are the type of services they actually brought to the table for the customers. Okay, so they are, Chaitil mentioned earlier on, there are actually two main players in the ecosystem. They're small, but two main players. One is the CPO, charging point operator, as well as the e-mobility service provider. So for them, Neogi is basically an e-services, e-mobility service provider, as well as a charging point operator. So they are providing charging service on their own charging stations. Okay, they are at the same time, from home charging perspective, they are selling charging points so that and installing it in homes so that people can actually charge at home. Other things, very importantly, roaming services. So if you're not familiar, roaming, why is roaming coming out in the EV world? All right, so I'll talk a little bit about that. So we're more familiar about roaming in telco, where, when I move to a different country, when I travel to a different country, I connect to someone else's network. So that's roaming maybe to you. So how does it work in an EV charging world? So I'll talk about that a little bit in the next slide. So very straightforward business goals that they have. They want to have, be able to roll out commercial offers, not only for B2C, business to consumers, also for the B2B market as well. They want automation in their system. Automation in terms of fulfillment. When a subscriber comes in, signs up, what other downstream system do I need to inform about this? And also from a collection perspective, how am I to automate the collection of this usage data we spoke about? Okay, so they want to drive for as much automation as possible. So again, they want to be able to roll out roaming services. And lastly, because there's roaming, one of the business requirements is basically partner settlement. All right, so these are the few things. Don't really be bothered about this, but just the two products that the Neogi actually deployed is basically SAP BRIM. BRIM is actually in the previous slide. It's Billing and Revenue Innovation Management. So that's called BRIM in short. So they acquired this as well as SAP Convergent Mediation by Digital Root. So this is basically the product from my company that we provide to SAP to complete the end-to-end solution. What type of businesses can you actually do? How can you actually make money out of EV charging? So I have 4 examples that I've taken from Neogi. So the first is straightforward, charging. You provide an e-mobility service. You want to allow your customers to basically charge the vehicle. So to charge a vehicle, right now, the market trend right now is still usage-based. Usage-based meaning you could be charged based on how long you actually plug in, or you could be charged based on the actual power consumed. while you're charging. So these are all consumption-based driven. These are all usage-driven. It's not a fixed fee throughout the month, all right? So it's usage-based driven. Again, right now, the trend is still usage-driven. Maybe, I don't know, going forward, it could be a flat fee of some sort, all right? And then, of course, how do you actually collect the money? You produce a monthly invoice. So here, they're going by maybe more familiar with post-paid model. That means I use the service, then I get invoiced. But of course, going forward, they can also go in the prepaid model, where the customer basically provides the money first, and then you deplete the credit along the way. So very basic model here. You provide an e-mobility service. You want to allow the customers to charge. How do you actually charge it? By usage. The second is basically we talk about installing, selling and installing the chargers at home. So here, they have chosen to charge on a monthly flat fee. That means once I install it, I charge you on a monthly fee, regardless of how much you use, because you're actually consuming, the customer is consuming his own electricity. It's not consuming Neogy's electricity. So they are already being billed as utilities bill. So, but of course, they've chosen to go for a flat fee, but it does not mean that you cannot go with a usage. You could be actually charging for how many times you actually use the equipment and so on. But again, they've chosen to go with flat fee with no usage-based rating. So the third type of model is, here we go, roaming. So what is roaming in EV? So the concept is very similar to mobile. So being a Neogy, or rather, Neogy is providing the charging points, but there are a lot of other players. So again, Neogy is a CPO plus MSP. So there are two in one. But there are players out there who are just mobility service providers. So how do the customers actually charge? So they actually have to come to Neogy's charging point, plug in and charge on Neogy. But they are not Neogy's customers. Okay, so that's roaming. That's someone else's customer coming into Neogy network to charge. So you must have a way to allow, first of all, to allow the charging. And again, current market trend, you're charging by usage. So the usage price could be different from your own Neogy's own customer. It could be more expensive, all right? Or maybe it's not so complex. Here, for Neogy's customer, maybe you have peak, off-peak, weekdays, weekends. Here, it could be a flat, per minute charge or per hour charge, And it could be higher charge, of course, because it's not your customer. And this is where we talk about roaming. Then you must be able to do a settlement, partner settlement. You must be able to charge that MSP. You don't own that customer. The MSP owns the customer. So how do you actually, collect the money back? You actually have to invoice the MSP as a B2B business partner. All right, so that's another model you should think about, allowing roaming to happen. Of course, this goes two ways. Here it actually says, the customers, Neogy's customers can actually go and plug in to someone else's charging points. Let's say you're traveling to a state that doesn't have a Neogy network. So what can you do? You need to charge. So Neogy will allow its customers to basically charge on someone else's charging points. And again, roaming applies for them, so there's settlement between the two parties. So roaming can happen both ways. Lastly, profit sharing. Something very interesting. So instead of acquiring all the charging point property by themselves, buying, paying for all the properties, what about, let's think about profit sharing. Bring in partners, real estate players that owns the establishment, owns the plot of land, the parking spaces and lots, all right? Why not do a profit sharing with them? Talk to them, one example, IKEA. They have plenty of parking. So what if Neogy brings their charging point to IKEA, installs it there? So what's the benefit to IKEA allowing you to install that? Then the profit sharing model comes in nicely. So the benefit for IKEA is a model that you can think about. And every customer that charges at IKEA's charging point, you can actually have a cut, a revenue share, give a little bit of that profit to IKEA. So that basically helps also because optimizing the acquisition of all the charging points location. So this is a very nice model that they came up with. So something that you should also consider if you're into this business. So overall, what I want to share with you is we have to rethink about the entire quote to cash or order to cash, depending on where you actually want to start the business. So quote to cash or order to cash from the point where a subscriber signs up to the point that you can actually collect the money. So I will not go through all this entire thing, but just want to point out that basically usage collection is one of the business process, and that's where our product actually sits. So what you want to actually think about is, from the start, you want to have a quote to cash solution that offers you a way to create and design services, service-based business. That's, for example, subscription-based. Are you able to do recurring, one-time fees, consumption-based? You need a system to be able to support all this. You must have a system that actually allows you to charge all this, and also customer focus, be able to not only AP, AR, not only AR, AP rather, because there's settlement between partners, roaming. You need a system to be able to do that, B2B, B2C on a single platform. And that's where SAP's BRIM solution actually contributed to NeoG's business model. So my last slide, very quickly, applicable cross industries. So what I just spoke about the model, about NeoG bringing, the billing system, going into usage and all that, is not limited only to EV charging. It applies, all the way from the private sector all the way down to public sectors. Any industries, if they are going into a transformation of offering Uberized services, Uberized business model, offering it differently. You want to offer, instead of selling a product, now I want to sell a service. What's the best way right now? Is basically on subscription model. You go with a subscription model, it's more usership rather than ownership. And then you want to, again, as I mentioned earlier on, you want to bring in the component of usage. Because studies have shown that together with that recurring fees, with usage, that's going to make the business grow much more and much faster. All right, so that's all I have. So I hope I was on time. So we are down to the closing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. That was a wonderful presentation.